Secret Service did not give clear guidance or direction to our local law enforcement partners. There were mistakes, lack of clarity, fragmentation, deficiencies, and it was a failure. Those words coming straight from Acting Secret Service Director Ron Rowe right there in the press conference as he was giving a brief on what the investigation showed into basically the failed response to that assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania. Now the question is, he raised the issue of penalties, changes. What are we going to see in the coming days? Let's bring in our Justice and Homeland Security senior reporter, Jack Date, now also a senior reporter, Catherine Falder. So, Jack, let's start with you. Where do you want to begin? Clearly he laid out everything that went wrong there. I think that everybody knows what happened. It was pretty bad situation, but he didn't point to exactly who's going to pay the price for that when he was asked about it. But he did mention a lot of changes, including more agents, more resources, new technology. What stood out to you?
Well, I think, first of all, looking at sort of what went wrong here, it's pretty much, as you said, what we thought it would be. It was communications issues, but also their assessment and things like their lack of just follow through in communications and being able to drill down to what the locals were doing and assign them tasks, the lack of diligence, the due diligence that's required. When they really protected that stage area, they knew that there were line of sight issues that they needed to mitigate, and they didn't really take all the steps that they could have taken to prevent all those. And for that, they say that they are accountable for that, not the locals, that they didn't provide the direction that they needed to. There was a sniper team that was inside the AGR building, but the Secret Service was barely really aware that they were there, and they had no communication means with them. They didn't have radios that were talking to each other. So as calls were coming in through the local systems, they weren't shared in real time with the Secret Service. Those delays could have been critical. The report also finds, he didn't talk about this, but we've seen elements of the report. They had drone systems that they were that weren't working, frankly. They had technical difficulties that morning. They could have perhaps spotted the shooter's drone that he put up earlier in the day, but their systems weren't working. So they had all kinds of deficiencies. And as you point out, now people are going to be held accountable. So we're in the accountability phase. That goes to their Office of Professional Responsibility to try to figure out what punishments are available. They're going to look at the whole range of punishments and dole them out as appropriate. But he said that those are personnel matters, and by federal regulations, he's not allowed to really speak about those publicly. But clearly, they want to hold some people accountable and get in front of this as quickly as they can.
And he also was quick, Jack, to point out this second assassination attempt. He laid out everything that went right in that scenario, that the agents put together a security plan quickly when the president wanted to go out and play golf, that he had agents sweeping all around as he started to play the course. So do you agree that it was a totally different scenario this time around? And do you think it's because of what happened in Butler?
Well, I think after Butler happened, the Department of Homeland Security, and really at the president's order, President Biden ordered that former President Trump, get the highest level of security, and they effectively ramped it up to be equivalent as much as it can be with the security that's provided the sitting president himself. And so they had more assets available. They had a counter-assault team, a counter-sniper team, and you know, they had the vigilance of a single agent that spotted the threat at the tree line. So in their view, the system worked. They will, of course, review it to see if there's anything that can be learned and improved on it. But in that instance, they feel confident and comfortable that the system they put in place to protect that golf outing actually worked, and they were able to neutralize that threat.
And Catherine, one of the reporters there in the room asked, does this mean that Trump and VP Harris will have to campaign differently, live their lives differently? He didn't really answer that.
He didn't really answer that, of course, particularly as it relates to the campaign events. As you mentioned, there were questions after the second assassination attempt, of course, if he would have to rejigger his schedule here. Of course, there were more assets put in place, as Jack noted, after the July assassination attempt. But it was interesting because the Secret Service said, of course, it's their responsibility to provide a secure environment. They said that they want their protectees, whoever they are, to live their lives with some normalcy, but they must do so with the highest level of protection. And as we've reported, as Jack's team has reported, we essentially have reported that Rowe, when he met with Trump earlier this week in Florida in a private briefing, he said, and he advised Trump, that there needs to be more planning going into these golf outings. They shouldn't be last minute, for example, maybe a little bit more security. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's not getting the highest level of protection. He is, and the Secret Service director made that clear, but there needs to be a little bit more planning, at least from their end, in these private outings that Trump chooses to go on.
And one more question, Jack. What do you make of the fact that Rowe said, and I'm looking at his comments about DHS, saying we need to wean off DHS assets? I mean, don't you think this is a time that they need more support from the Department of Homeland Security?
Absolutely, but he's also saying that they need to make the Secret Service as self-sufficient as possible, because really their mission is the burdens of this mission are going to continue going forward. So while we'll get to January, we'll have an inauguration, we'll be back to having a single president and a single vice president that will have to be protected. We're going to very quickly be in another election cycle where the burdens are going to expand to candidates again. And so being able to really do that without, as he calls it, redlining their staff. I mean, agents that are often at their desks are now out doing protective detail. Our understanding is that that's at like 98% of the available agents are out there working, standing post and doing protective details. And that's not sustainable over the long term. So they're really trying to get some more backfill to be able to replace that, as he talked about replacing that in the life cycle.
Yeah, and even looking forward to all the major events the Secret Service is going to be a part of, even talking about the Olympics. Jack Date, Catherine Falders, thanks, guys.